Right. Hello. Today we will learn about YANG data modeling language, and we'll do a lab and see how YANG can be used to log into Cisco IOS XE router and configure and retrieve information from network device using YANG with NetConf. Right. So we will be learning about what is YANG data modeling and how to connect to a Cisco IOS XE router and how to perform necessary configuration, and if it is needed, how to retrieve information or retrieve configuration states from the router. Right. So we will be doing a lab also today. Right. Now in order to do a lab, I have my cloud services router also. I am using here my ESXi installed on my Power Edge server, right, and ESXi server is installed. On top of that ESXi type 1 hypervisor, I have installed Ubuntu Linux 64-bit, and on top of that I am running Eve next generation. Right, so already Eve next generation also installed, and I have if you log into the Eve, right, I have already started the cloud services router also. Right, now first of all, now if I explain you how my lab is set up here, I have my computer here. Right, this is my computer with IP address 192.168.0.23, and it is connected to a switch. Right, and also from the switch I have access to, or I have connectivity to my Power Edge server. So inside my Power Edge server, so let's say the setup is like this. Right, I have this is my Power Edge server, and I have the hardware here, and also ESXi server is ESXi server type 1 hypervisor is installed, right, on top of the hardware here. And after that I have the Ubuntu installed, right, Ubuntu 64-bit, and on top of that I have the Eve next generation installed. So my Cisco cloud services router is running inside the Eve next generation. Right, so I have already started my cloud services router, and I have assigned IP address of 192.168.0.250. So this is the setup here. Right, so hardware platform is the ESXi is installed on my Power Edge server, and Ubuntu and Eve next generation on top of it, and I have the cloud services router also powered on, and I am going to access over the IP network from my PC 192.168.0.23, and I have already installed Python also. Right, Python 3.68. I have activated the virtual environment VNV virtual environment, because in my PC I am running Python 3.68 and also Python 2.7x. right, both are installed. So I have created a virtual environment and I have activated the virtual environment, and I am using Python 3.68. Using Python 3.68 I am going to access the cloud services router using YANG data modeling language, and we will learn about it, right, using YANG data modeling language, and it runs with NetConf, right, network configuration protocol. Right, so we will be learning about it. Right, so this is going to be our lab setup. From my PC I am going to access the cloud services router. Right, so let's first of all see whether I have access to the cloud services router. Let's go to the command prompt, right, and let's ping and see. From my PC, ping 192.168.0.250 whether I have reachability from my PC to the cloud services router. Right, so I have already reachability, so the reachability is there, so therefore I can access the device. Right, so that means I have IP connectivity to the particular device. Right, so when let's go back to the Yang, right? Let's clear the screen, right? Let's go back to Yang. Let's open up my slide here, right? So what is this Yang, right? Yet another next generation, right? Yang means yet another next generation, is a standard data modeling language, right, with RFC 6020, used to create, configuration and retrieve operational data from a network device. Yang data models provide the ability to configure the network devices such as router and switch. So using the normally if you look at normally when you configure a router, how do we configure a router? Using command line interface, right? So we can access the router through console connection, or we can telnet the device, or we can use SSH. But even if you use telnet or SSH, or even if you use console access, we access the command line interface only, right? So we use config t, right, enable and interface fast Ethernet 0/0. So we log into the execution space, and we use command line interface to perform the necessary configuration. But using Yang, we are not going to use the command line interface, right? We are not going to log into the execution space, or we are not going to use the command line interface, right? So we will see those things little later, right? So Yang data models provide the ability to configure network devices such as routers, switches, and collect operational data if needed, without using the command line interface, right? We are not going to use the command line interface. Yang uses network configuration protocol. So Yang is a data modeling language, but Yang works with NetConf protocol. So it uses a protocol called NetConf, that means network configuration protocol, as a medium to transport the configuration or operational data, right? Yang was developed by Ietf, right? So Yang is a standard based data modeling language, right? So this is a key point, because we are using a standard based data modeling language, right? We are using a standard based data modeling language, right? We are using a standard based data modeling language. So that's a key point, right? So actually, so what is a data model, right? When we say data model, what it is, right? What is it, right? What is a data model, right? It's a standard way to describe whatever can be configured on a device and all the administrative actions that can be executed on a device. So that means what? What is a data model? It's a standard way to describe. It's a standard way to describe something, right? So what is that something, right? So it's a standard way to describe something, right? So what is that something, right? For example, right, it could be a router interface. So normally, right, let's say, how would you describe a router interface? For example, now let's look at this one, right? So okay, anyway, so how would you describe a router interface? Now for example, let's look at it, router interface. Now how are we going to describe a router interface, right? So what are the attributes associated with this particular router interface, right? So we would say, like, router interface should have a name, right? We say, okay, it should have a name, like let's say gigabit 0/0, or maybe serial 0/0, whatever, right? So a name, right? So it has to have right, router interface. What about the operational status? So that means it's also one of the attributes. What is a operational state means? What is a operational state means, right? What is operational state means? Let's put it like this, operational status. So that means whether the router interface is up or down. it could be up, it could be down, right? So the operational status may be up or down, right? And what about the IP address, right? So the router interface, in order to operate, it has to have a IP address. So it has to have IP address, and also it must have a subnet mask associated, right? /24 or /30 or whatever, right? So it has to have a name, operational status, and a IP address, right? And what else, right? And a description, right? Description, like, right? What is a description? It is optional, but what is a description? Link to data center, right? Link to data center. So that means this is the interface or that is connected to the data center, a description, right? So it might have a description, right? And also administrative status, right? That means what? The interface is enabled or not. It is enabled or not, right? Enabled or not, right? So you see, this router interface, when you try to describe a router interface, right, what are the attributes or what are the leaves associated? Name, operational status, IP address, description, administrators, right? Administrative states, and also the MAC address if it is a LAN interface, right? So these are the attributes that is associated with the interface. But if you try to describe a access control list, the attribute associated with access control list is not these things. It has a different set of attributes or leaves. And what about the routing table? If you try to describe a routing table, what are the attributes associated with the routing table? It has got its own attributes, right? So ACL, it has got, in order to describe a access control list, it has its own attributes, and the routing table, it has its own attributes, right? And when you try to describe an interface, it has got its own attributes. So you see, what is a data model? What's a data modeling language means? It's a way to describe something that is inside the router. That something means router interface, access control list, routing table, those things, right? So when it comes to YANG, right, when it comes to YANG, yet another next generation, when it comes to YANG, it has an, for example, the YANG, it has an interface module. Let's say Ietf interface module, right, already created to describe interface and associated attributes, like Ietf interface module. Like this, there are different modules. To describe the access control list, there is one module. To describe routing table, there is another different module. And to describe the interface, there is already a module created for that, right? So therefore, a router may have thousands of modules inside the device. Each module describe a specific thing or specific component inside the router, like router interface, access control list, routing table. So all these modules are, where are these modules located? It's inside the router. It is manufacturer's responsibility, right, to include these particular modules inside the router. We don't access the internet and download these modules and import it into the router. No, we don't do such things. It is the manufacturer's responsibility to include these particular modules inside the router. But and also, not all Cisco routers supports this particular YANG data modeling language, right? Not like, for example, like let's say 1841. they don't support it there. But if you look at iOS XR router, so now all those the routers, they support YANG data modeling language. We have to just enable the support only. It is already there inside the included in the iOS, all these YANG data modules. The support is there, so we have to just enable the feature, or we have to just enable it, right? So there are new data modules developed all the times by Ietf, private companies like such as Cisco, and by other different companies also, right? So network devices typically support dozens or even hundreds of YANG data modules to describe various components of the network device, right? So therefore there may be hundreds or thousands of YANG data modules to describe various components of the network device, like router interface to describe it, one YANG module. To describe the access control list, there is another YANG data module. For the routing table, there is another YANG data module. So the router may have hundreds or thousands of YANG data modules to describe the various objects or the various components of the particular device, right? If right, so let's look at one of the Ietf YANG data module. So this is Ietf interface data module, right? This is Ietf interface data module, right? So you see it describes interface, right? So we call it let's say we call it interface node here, interface. So the upper part is the container, so we are going to describe a interface. But you see in the Ietf interface module, it describes the interfaces only. It doesn't describe about the routing table, it doesn't describe about the access control list. For those things, they have got different modules to describe those things. But to describe interface, there is a specific data module that is dedicated or reserved to describe the interfaces. Now for example, you see interfaces, you have a name, right? Gigabit Ethernet 1, and description, right? And the type, and whether it is enabled. True means it is enabled, false means it is not enabled, and the IPv4 addresses and the subnet mask. And these are the leaves or attributes of that particular interface, right? So now let's the YANG data is formatted using XML, right? The YANG data is formatted or encoded using XML, right? Now so therefore let's look let's go to the lab, right? So therefore now what is the biggest advantage using this particular YANG? Now I said what is the biggest advantage, right? What is the biggest advantage? Because YANG is a standard based data modeling language. So if the vendor supports, now for example, Ietf module to describe the interface. Now therefore this is Ietf module. So therefore even if the vendor is Cisco, or even if the vendor is Juniper, right, maybe Huawei, different vendors, if they all support the same module, not if, normally they support it, right? So if when they support this standard based module, using this YANG data modeling language, we can send the necessary configuration. So the device is going to receive the whatever the request sent by the whatever the automation tool, and the device is going to receive it and perform the necessary configuration regardless of the vendor, whether it is a Cisco or Huawei or some other vendor. Even though the vendors are different, now they can use a standard based communication or data modeling language to perform the necessary configuration, right? So, because otherwise for Cisco routers, you have to log in and you have to execute, or you have to use their command set, right? And if it is a Juniper, they have a slightly maybe different command set. Huawei, they may be a slightly different command set. So therefore, for each and every specific vendor, you need to know their whatever the syntax, the command formats, but it's not going to be that hard, right? So it is going to be almost similar with a little bit slight differences, but even though it is not exactly the same, there is some differences. So but using Yang, even though the vendors are different, you can use the standard based data modeling language to perform the necessary configurations, even though the vendors are different, right? So what I have done is, right, so where is my PC? My PC is located here. IP address is 192.168.0.23. So I checked it whether I have reachability to my device, right? So the cloud services router's IP is 250, right? So let me go inside the device, right? So let's go to enable, right? Password is Cisco, right? And let's look at the running configuration, right? Right, I have set the host name as Cislanka, right? Cloud services router, right? And after that, if you look at my interface IP, it has got its own digital certificate, right? I have a user created in my this particular device, username as Cislanka, with privilege 15, that means the topmost privilege, and the password is set to Cisco, right? And I have the interface, gigabit interface 1, and the IP address is assigned, right? I have gigabit 2, it's not configured, gigabit 3 not yet configured, gigabit 4 not yet configured. And what is the key command to activate the Yang support? It is the netconf Yang. It is the netconf Yang, right? So you have to execute this particular command, right? So now, right, so this is going to be my PC, right? From my PC I am going to access the cloud services router. So it is going to be something like this. Yang is there, and it is formatted using XML, and we have the protocol netconf, right? Netconf is the protocol, right? Right, so that means Yang uses network configuration protocol, or netconf, as a medium to transport the configuration information from the client to the particular Yang enabled network device, right? So netconf is the protocol, and we use SSH Safwan shell, and using SSH only we are going to connect. Yang by default it works on TCP port 830, right? It uses transport layer is here, TCP. It uses TCP port 830 by default. If you want, you can change it, right? If you want, you can change it, but by default the TCP port that is used is port number 830. That is the default port. So in my cloud services router or the iOS XE, I didn't change the default port, so I kept it as it is. So we are going to access the cloud services router. So what I have done, let's get back to my Python shell, right? I have activated the virtual environment. So I am inside the virtual environment. If I type Python, if I look at the Python version, it is going to be 3.68. So this is the Python version that I am using, right? So let's go to the slides, right? So I showed it, right? Right, and now this is what we are going to do, right? So let's look at this one, right? So what I am going to do is, right, I am from my PC. So that means from my PC I am going to access the cloud services router, that is iOS XE, using this particular, right, I am going to use this particular command set, right. So this is what I am going to use now, right. So this is what I am going to use, right. So it is going to be I am going to SSH, right. So that means I am going to use the protocol SSH to access the particular cloud services router, right. I am going to use SSH, right. So this is what I am going to use. These are the command I will be using now, right. So let me put it like this, right. So let me open this one, right, and no, so this is what I am going to do, right. My PC is somewhere here, right. So I am in my virtual Python environment now. So I am going to run SSH, right. I am going to type SSH. What is the username I have created? So what is the username? That is Cislanka, right. That is Cislanka. And what is the IP address of the router interface? The IP address is going to be 192.168.0.250, right. And what is the default port? What is the port I am going to connect to? I am going to connect to port number 830. That is the default port, and I am using that specific port only. And I am going to use the NetConf protocol also, right. So YANG is the data modeling language, and the NetConf is the transport medium, right. So now when I execute this particular command, what is going to happen? So from my PC, now let me draw that one also. My PC is here, right. From my PC, right, when I execute this particular command, I am going to establish a connection. I am going to try to establish a connection. But what is going to happen is, at that particular moment, my cloud services router is going to send a hello to me. It's going to send a hello to me. I will be able to see the server hello or the router hello. And after that, I need to send a client hello back to the cloud services router. Now once this is happened, once this is finished only, I will have a successful connection to the cloud services router. So the server is going to send a hello to me, and I am going to send a client hello. But all these things we are going to do it manually. Now it is possible I can create a Python script. I can do the necessary configurations, right, and I just run the Python script like Python sysconf1 execute sysconf1.py Python file. So I can create a file and insert all the necessary include all the necessary commands inside that, and I just run the file or run the script. Automatically it is going to connect and send the appropriate client hellos, establish a connection, send the necessary configuration, do the configuration, and log out, exit. So everything can be automated, right? But if I create a file like this, you will not see what are the things happening here, like. So therefore I thought to do it manually. Now this is for study purposes only, but in the production environment, we create a Python script, right, and just execute it, right. So everything is going to be automated, right. But in this particular example, I am going to do it manually. So when I try to establish a connection, the server sends a hello. So I will send the client hello manually. And once the connection is established, we will verify whether the connection is really established or not. And after that, we can send the necessary configuration request or whatever. If we want to retrieve some informations, we can request it and get the reply back, right. So and after that, we can, once it is all finished, we can exit also. It is possible to exit also, right. So now what are we going to do is, let's enter it, right. So let's enter. So I am using the password Cislanka, using the username Cislanka, but the router is going to ask me the password. So the password is Cisco, so I am going to enter it. Now you see it is going to try to establish a connection. The router is asking me the password. So what is the password? Cisco. So now router is going to send me the server hello. So now you see this is the hello. So hello means what? So the router is telling me, these are the data modules that we support. These are the capabilities, right? We support that, we support this YANG module, right? These are the capabilities that we support. So the Cisco specific data modules and Ietf based data modules, right? Ietf modules, Cisco specific modules. So all the specific data modules, the capabilities, they are going to send it to us. So that is the server hello. So to complete the connection, right, the connection is not yet completed. So in order to complete the connection, we have to send the client hello. So what I am going to do, I am going to send the client hello. So where is the client hello? I have already in my slide. So this is going to be my client hello, right? So I have to write, copy these things, right, and I have to paste it. So this is going to be the client hello. So now I have sent the client hello, right, but it doesn't show anything on the screen, right? But how do I verify really whether I have established the connection or not? I can log into the console. So the console means I have already console access. That means I have access to this particular router, but not via the Python, right? But I have a different internal access for that one. So what I can do is I can type this particular command, right? What I can do is I can type show I can type this particular command. What is the command that we are going to use now? Let's use the show netconf dash yang and session, right? So you see it is going to show me, right? It's going to show me there is a session established, right? Now let me execute it again, right? So it says yes, there is a session already established using this particular netconf protocol, right? Now who the user that is already connected to my device using netconf, the user's username is Cislanka, and from what device? From 192.168.0.23. Any global locks? No, not yet, none. That means no global locks enabled. So that means there is no lock. That means I can do the necessary configuration if I want. At the same time, if somebody else is connected to this device, they can perform the configuration simultaneously. If another person is connected to this device, they can execute the necessary configuration. So all of us can simultaneously perform any required configuration if the lock is none. But if I lock it, I can send a command for that, and if I can lock the session. So if I lock the session, that means nobody else can perform any configuration until my session is disconnected or until I release the lock, right? So until I release the lock. So now I have not locked it. So therefore me and any other person can perform the necessary configuration, right? So the connection is established, right? Connection is established. Now what are we going to do? Now what else, right? Now what are we going to do? Now I am going to request my cloud services router, can you just show me your interfaces that you have got in your router? So I'm going to request that particular piece. I'm not going to configure anything. I'm going to just request the interfaces available and the interface details of this particular cloud services router. Now to do that, right, I have another command for that, right? To do that, let me clear this one, right? So to do that, right, To do that, I have another command for that, right? So now you see this is the show netconf yang session, and to get the interface details, right? So I'm going to send some remote procedure calls, right? So let me copy this one, right, and let me paste it, right? Let me copy and paste it on the session, right? So this Python session, right? Let me paste it, right? Now I am what I am doing, I am requesting the interface details, but you see the device has responded to me. So the device is telling me, okay, these are my interface details from here to here. These are my interface details. These are my interface details. So that means now from this one, I have requested the interface details. What are the interfaces you have got, and can you please send me the details of those particular interfaces, right? What are the interfaces you have got, and what is the IP address configured? I'm interested only on looking at the interfaces details. Can you just please send me? But the router has sent me all the details. Now these are the details, but you see I am just using a Python script here. It's not a some advanced graphical user based application. It's just a small Python Python request I sent, right? So therefore the device has sent me the appropriate reply. Now this is how do I see this one. Now actually these are the details, right? Now if you look at my slide, right, so the router is going to send me the reply. The router is going to reply me these things. Now it has got all the details, right? But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these things, right? I'm going to copy this reply, because I am not using a graphical user based some application or something like that. I have just simply sent a request and they have sent a reply, right? But what I can do is I can take this information, this details, and I can open this particular XML viewer, so I can paste it there, right? So I can paste the information and I can say put it in a proper format, beautify, right? So now it is going to show me in this format, right? So this is what it's going to be look like, but actually these are the same, but right, I put it in a proper readable format here. So you see so you see the configuration information, that means interface details. So interfaces, right? So this is the container and it has got the interface name is gigabit Ethernet 1, and what is it enabled? Yes, it is true. That means I have configured the no shutdown. And what about the IPv4 address? 192.168.0.250, that's the IP, and this is the mask. And I have got another interface gigabit Ethernet 2, and look at the enabled, it is false, that means it's shut down. And do we have any IPv4 or IPv6 address? Not yet, right? So gigabit Ethernet 3, same thing, gigabit Ethernet 4, the same thing. So therefore now you see I have got only 4 interfaces. So that's what I requested. So whatever I requested from the router, right, from the router, whatever I have requested, right, they have sent me the reply, right, whatever I have requested, right? And also at the same time, if I want, I can lock it also. Now how do we lock it? Now in order to lock the session, right, now this is what we see. In order to lock the session, we can issue this particular command, right? So command means this is the whatever the required configurations that need to be sent from the Python to the the Cisco Cloud Services router. So if I send this particular configuration information here, so if I send this one, the router is going to get locked, right? So locked means what? in that case, if I send that particular piece of information, the router is going to get logged. That means only I will be able to perform the necessary configuration. At that same time, nobody else will be able to do any configuration changes, right? Because I have locked the configuration, right? So now again, if I log into this particular device and if I try to check it, you see show netconf yang session, right? So it shows me the user still logged in. So how do I disconnect? I'm not going to show you all the related configurations here. This is just a demonstration how to use YANG data modeling language and do to access the device and to perform necessary basic configuration, right? So this is just a basic session only, right? So now still my connection is up. That means still I am connected. There is no lock here. So if I want to log out, right, if I want to disconnect the session, there are two ways. From Python I can request, that means I can say I want to exit and I can log out, or otherwise I can go to the router and clear the session also. So the session can be cleared from the router also. But let me use this particular Python. This one, no, this is locked, no, right? So I can lock the running configuration also, but I am not going to do it, right? So I am going to log out, right? So I am going to copy that one and I am going to paste it here, right? So I am going to paste it here. You see session ID, that means message ID 2. So I have successfully logged out. So you see I have come to the my shell again, right? Python shell again. So if I check the session again, show netconfig yang session, you see there are no active sessions. So there are no active sessions because I have successfully logged out, right? I have successfully logged out, right? So I have successfully logged out. So now what I try to show you here is just some very basic stuff, like how you can just connect to the iOS XE router and access the device, and whether you can do some configurations or whatever. So just that's why that's what I wanted to just show you, right? So but normally in the production environment we don't manually connect like this. We every time run Python scripts, right? We write all the necessary configuration inside the file and we just execute the file, or we just run the Python script and it is going to automatically connect to the device and do the necessary configuration and log out, right? So it's going to be all automated, right? It's going to be all automated. Now this subject, it is covered in CCNP Enterprise Core also, and also DevOps, right? But now in our CCNP class everything is in detail, like what is netconf, what is resconf, and how do you lock it and how do you release it, right? And also Python script, how do you use Python scripts to log into router or switch and perform the necessary configuration, right? And RESTful APIs, DNA center, right? Access the DNA center, everything is done in CCNP Enterprise Core also, but here it is just a demonstration only, right? Just a demonstration only, right? Just how to use netconf with this particular YANG data modeling language. So thank you very much. Thank you.